embrace the magical side of life, where anything is possible and the infinite is accessible to all? Let's have a conscious conversation about what's going on in the world, in your life, and your relationship from the expanded perspective of your soul. The path to awareness begins and ends in the heart. So let's take it there, one step at a time, and learn to cultivate magic in your life every single day. In each episode, we share a collective space in which we discover the unique facets of our own magic and embody our superhuman qualities by humbly exploring how it's super simply to be human. Hosts Kai and Dell co-create a magical experience to remind you that you are magical as fuck. Now, be unleashed. This is our daily magic.
And we are here. You know what's actually funny? Because I was just watching the intro, and in the part where it says simply what it is simply to be human, and the guy's like this, I'm like, that guy kind of looks like Aaron in the background right there.
I could be that guy.
Yeah. I just saw... We might have. You never know. I do remember one of your videos, you did do something like that. So that's why I'm like, maybe. I don't know.
I got the copyright on this right here.
All right, everyone. A lot of you have been asking for this, and it's going down. This is part 2. If you weren't here for part 1, I highly recommend you to take a look at the part 1 episode we had with Aaron. But here's part 2 of this episode, and we're going to be tuned in for some additional magic here. So I'll do the general intro. Welcome to our Daily Magic podcast. I'm Dell, and my wife.
Kai.
And what we do here is to help people to cultivate more magic in their life. Our belief is you all are magical as fuck, like our intro said. And having magical conversations like we're going to have today is going to help you to, 1, discover some magic for yourself, but then 2, to be able to see someone else who is embodying their own unique magic and gift to showcase to the world. So I'm excited for this conversation. I don't know where this conversation is going to go, but the conversation is going to go where it needs to go. And for those of you who are here live, put your comments in, put your questions in. This will be an engaging, flowing conversation. I already agreed with Kai earlier. I was saying, like, since we have a person who was already a guest on here, instead of reading, like the long intro of who you are, we're going to ask you, who are you? For those of you who don't know who this person is, going to allow him to express who he is in this moment right now. Who are you? Okay.
So you don't want like a biography answer, but you want like a philosophical answer, right?
Whatever you want to do. You can do both. You can embody both of them, but like there's so much information that could be shared about this, but instead of reading like the generic one, like Aaron Abke is this, we're going to allow you to express yourself, express your truth.
I love it, man. Yeah, that is the ongoing question, who am I? And for me lately, it just sort of feels like I am an unfolding mystery, an unfolding journey of the creator that just gets more beautiful and more exciting by the day. It's for me, I'm so into so many different spiritual modalities, Hinduism, mysticism, Buddhism, Christian Science, it could go on. And it's like sort of like different flavors of cuisine and all the cultures of the world. There's Indian food, Mexican food, Asian food, and so on. and they all are like beautiful in their own unique way. That's kind of how spiritual traditions are to me, and I just can't help myself but to partake of all of them. And it's like each one of them I'll get obsessed with for a certain period of time, and it's as if that spiritual tradition will show me a totally new part of myself, my eternal self, not the human self, that I had never discovered before. And you just keep building on these layers of self-discovery and self-knowledge. And to me, it's like I'm totally convinced at this point I'll never have an answer for, here's who I am, let me tell you. But it's more like I'm on the journey, and that's where I want to be.
I love that. That's a amazing way of explaining it, and the constant unraveling of yourself that's going on. And do you feel like in this process of this unraveling in the space you're in now, there was parts of you in moments saying like, oh, this is who I am, and then it's like, nope, that's not who you are. Wait, this is who I am. Nope, that's not who you are. Did that happen for you as well in your journey?
For sure. And it's also the realization that you can be whatever you want to be.
Ooh.
Really, like you are in a sense an expression of the creator. We know that. So you do have a unique revelation to give to the world of who God is, but also that part of that is your own co-creation with God of who do I want to be. And to me, I feel like when we have a desire in our heart, when we have a wish inside of us to be something, to actualize part of our potential that we know is in there, I've started to realize how important it is to just be with that desire, knowing that because I wish for it, because I desire, because I feel it, that is the representation that it does exist in reality. In the same way that if I have a picture of something, the picture is proof that the original exists, right? Like a picture of a house or something. You see a picture of a house on my wall, you know that there's a real house somewhere. To me, that's what our desires are like. If I desire to be something in the world, to express a gifting or a calling, the very fact that I desire it means that it exists in me, and it just needs to be called out of me. If I want, if I want to place a certain image in a mirror, like a apple or something, I just have to hold up the apple, and the mirror will reflect it. In the same way, if I want to actualize some potential I feel inside myself, I just have to keep my mind on it, because the mind is like the mirror, right? And the mind will reflect that quality that exists in reality and reflect it through me, right? So it's also like, who am I / who do I want to be? I think both of those are equally part of our journey.
Absolutely. And being that both of them are part of the journey, how do you reconcile with who you are right now and on your way to who it is that you want to be?
Well, we have to love who we are here and now as if it's perfect. The Law of One talks about, Ross says in the Law of One that spiritual evolution requires the balance of knowing our eternal perfected self, that our higher self that always exists in its perfected state, and to also hold our humanness and the part of us that is evolving on a journey and learning and growing, and to hold both of those in equal proportion and know that they're equally valid, right? So I can know that I am eternally perfect and one with all that is, and I'm also experiencing a character named Aaron that's on a journey to learn and discover. And I think we need both, right? We wouldn't even know what perfection was without the imperfect, in air quotes, part of us. We wouldn't know the eternal self if we didn't know the finite self. They're like the mirror reflections that allow us to know who we really are.
Yeah, totally.
So in that journey, because it's a journey that a lot of us is on as well. Well, I feel like all of us is on it. The question is, how aware are you of this journey that you are on? And you're saying this, how they all played a part, but also I want to dive into that because we didn't dive into that in our last episode, the Law of One. So definitely want to dive more into the Law of One. And if you guys haven't seen it, Aaron has extensive videos on YouTube describing Law of One And the way I love to explain how Aaron does things like this, like the Law of One, A Course in Miracles, is he takes this information, he embodies it for himself, but he's able to articulate it in a way so simplistic and so powerful. And he just has a tool of being able to be, I think I called you this before, like a universal scribe, of being able to use this for yourself, learn the lessons and apply it. So I want to be able to talk about Law of One now, because a lot of people may not know about Law of One. I started Law of One. I haven't finished it yet because it was just so complex for me. I got to digest this information. Like, I can't keep moving on and moving on. And what I realized is when I started over again, I'm learning something new from this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for you, I'd like to learn, or like to hear from you. One, what led you to study the Law of One? And then two, can you express the Law of One, what it means to you, to our audience as well, to help them to get a better understanding of it?
Yeah, totally. I don't remember when I found it, to be honest. It had been on my radar a little bit here and there for about a year. And it was one of those things where it was like a book I knew I wanted to read. And at some point, I just decided to pull the trigger. And I started reading this text. And I think when we imagine what it would be like to talk to a true extraterrestrial being of a higher level of consciousness, we try to imagine what would that experience be like.
Yeah.
The Law of One checks every box of what you could think it would be like. It's obviously incredibly profound, delivers mind-blowing information that powerfully resonates when you hear it, of that makes sense, that's how the universe is. That explains so many questions. But it's also delivered in a way that I think, like all truly divine, spiritual knowledge, has a kind of simplicity to it that comes off as spiritual genius. Like A Course in Miracles, for example, opening line, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists, herein lies the peace of God. You're like, wow, that is spiritual genius, because it's so simple, but it delivers such a piercing truth that you hear it and you go, yep, that can't be denied. That's how the whole Law of One is for me when I read it. It's over and over, everything Ra says, a place in us knows these truths because we already contain all truth within us, but it has to be remembered and called out of us. And like you said, every time I read it, I'm on my 9th time through it. It's genuinely like I've never read it. It's a whole new revelation every time. And I'm more and more astounded. I think the wider my breadth of understanding is of the book, and I reread it again, it goes deeper to another layer. I'm like, oh, I never saw that the first time. Whoa, that changes everything. And then I read it again and it does it again. And so I think that's the hallmark of a really genuine, authentic, channeled work, is that it's kind of fractal like that. It can just keep going in on itself forever.
I love that. And you made a valid point as well in regards to that spiritual truth. Every time you reread the spiritual truth, there's a deeper level of that truth you can start to bring awareness to. And not even just with the Law of One, even the teachings of parables of Jesus as well, which is so powerful.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We can talk about that for sure.
Yeah. And even in the Law of One, I remember he talked about Jesus and talked about different density of beings, different levels of consciousness, and the people coming in. I believe they mentioned something about wanderers as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, it's interesting. That's the way it's explaining. I'm still not able to grasp the information that I got from this amazing book, The Law of One. I do love it. Every time I am Ra, it says whatever. I listen to the Audible on YouTube. So I am Ra. This. Is the vessel needs this, or I am Ra. Greetings from the love and light.
Or just be like, I am Ra. No.
Yeah. So it made me wonder, did they put I am Ra as to let you know who's speaking in each one? Because listener, I am Ra. And I was I wonder if it was that, or it was every time the channel happened, I am Ra. This is the answer to it.
Yeah. Well, if you go to Law of One.info, they have the
Yeah.
actual tape recordings from
Yeah.
the sessions.
Oh wow.
And so you can listen to Carla actually channeling every
Yeah.
session.
Yeah.
And it's very slow, and she's in a deep trance, so she's like
Yeah.
whispering it. But she says I am Ra for every single transmission, and it's like it's very slow. It's like I am Ra, and word by word like that. So this was like a very narrow band channel where like Carla had no memory of channeling it. Like she was truly inhabited by this being that was choosing each word as carefully as possible to make the transmission as accurate as possible. And what's cool is with the reason that Ra begins every transmission saying I am Ra is that when we get to the point where we can communicate with each other telepathically, the way that it works is if I could talk to you right now telepathically, you wouldn't be hearing my words in your brain. It's even more direct than that. It's like an immediate impression of what I think, feel, and mean. And it's like downloaded right away into your consciousness. So you just understand what I mean. And you could we know what this is like, right? If you get a download, like in meditation or something, you might get some mind-blowing epiphany in meditation, and it happens that quick, just boom. And then you go tell your friend about it, and it takes you 30 minutes to explain all the information that came in that 1 second. So we all know what that feels like. Well, that's what telepathy is like. It's this immediate exchanging of ideas prior to language even. And so in telepathy, if I'm going to communicate to you or Kai, let's say I'm in New York and you're in San Francisco, how do you know it's me communicating to you? Because you could be talking to a bunch of different beings in your mind. Well, every single being has their own unique energy signature, kind of like a name. And so if I want to transmit a thought or an idea to Kai in San Francisco, she'll just be, let's say, strolling down the street, and then she gets a feeling impression of what Aaron feels like in consciousness. Like there's just this immediate knowing Aaron is speaking, no doubt, right? Well, how do you translate that energetic frequency through verbal language? You can't. You can only say, I am Ra. So it's not that Ra is literally saying I am Ra. Like if Ra was a person, he would be saying that all the time. It's that Ra only communicates telepathically at their density, and every single thing Ra communicates has Ra's frequency to it. So they hear exactly who's speaking. So it wouldn't be said like that in a nonverbal communication, but it just comes across that way in a true channel, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And thank you for explaining it too. It makes sense how that unique embodiment, the unique energy that each one can give off these different beings. So for yourself, now I'm going to ask you, have you had any experiences, because you do meditation, you do spiritual work. So I'm sure with these experiences that you had with studying the Law of One, studying A Course in Miracles, having that connection with Jesus and stuff, did you have any like unique energies that you got to experience for yourself to know, like, okay, like this is the energy of Jesus coming through, this is the energy of Ra coming through, or whoever it may be? Because you pretty much say you went to the spiritual buffet and started picking different parts of the experience for yourself.
Yeah, I've not had like a channel come through or anything like that in meditation. I've never sought to be a channel, which I think has a lot to do with getting messages. I have had visitations on a couple of occasions from like ascended masters in a dream. Actually, one was in a dream, one was in a deep meditation. The one that came through a dream was Ram Dass's guru. You know Ram Dass?
Yeah.
Neem Karoli Baba.
Yeah.
He's like one of maybe my favorite sage of all time. I've read 3 different books about him and just have a real like heart connection to him. He visited me in a dream. I think it was the night before Thanksgiving or the night before Christmas, 2 or 3 years ago. And it was a really profound kind of message that was delivered to me during a time where I was really moving through some dark healing and stuff. Another time there was a being, an ascended master, that visited me in a meditation, and interestingly, it didn't tell me who it was. It didn't reveal its identity, but it had that frequency that I just talked about. And I went, oh my goodness, there's some kind of incredibly ascended being here. Like as if they were standing right in front of me. And the being said, in so few words, ask me one question, anything you want, and I'll answer you. And so I'm like, well, what question should I ask?
That's a question right there.
So naturally, I thought, well, the best question I could probably ask is, who am I? So I said, who am I? And then I felt as if the being, let's say he was standing 5 or 6 feet away. It felt energetically as if he walked right up, almost like nose to nose with me. And he said, you are what you experience. And then he disappeared. So that was pretty rad.
Yeah. Simple, yeah, profound message right there.
I was like, okay, message received.
That's so cool.
Still don't know who it was though.
Right. I mean, but then at the same time, it's a possibility that you received that energy signature. Maybe it just wasn't verbally communicated.
Right. Yeah.
Right. It's like a triangulation. It's like, okay, I means that it's the channel is coming through here. Am means that it's occurring right now. And then whatever comes after that is part of, their unique signature. That makes a whole lot of sense.
Totally. Yeah. It's a whole nother world, man.
We're just locating each other in the vast cosmic multiverse. That's quite amazing that you had that experience.
Yeah. At the level of consciousness we're at, we will look back, once we're in the 4th density, we will look back at, speaking with verbal language and stuff like this. Like we look back at the cavemen, trying to make fire and ooga booga and stuff. It's going to seem so like Paleolithic compared to what's really possible, which makes this experience very beautiful when you know at what elementary level we're at still. It's when you think, oh, this is as advanced as human beings will probably ever be, and then we're going to wipe ourselves out or something. That's kind of how most people think, I believe. And it's like, no, we're in consciousness kindergarten. We've just barely begun,
Yeah. I truly believe that like the cavemen were more connected than we were. Because like, was there really a language like the language we have now back then? How are they able to communicate with each other to let you know, like, hey, there's a saber-tooth tiger coming through or whatever it may be? So it makes me wonder, like, obviously we have more things in our life now to simplify our life with the technology, the internet and things like that. But really, like, how were they able to communicate to survive back then if they didn't have a language? That's just like a curious question I had.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Like how society has evolved and devolved at the same time, seemingly. Like we have so many devices now to make life more convenient and more laborless and stuff. And yet we're more diseased and more sick than ever, like shorter lifespan than even cavemen had. So we have all this technology that seemingly hasn't actually helped us evolve that much. And I think that's part and parcel of our state of consciousness. We're still coming out of 3rd density. So we have a lot of separation consciousness, and most of our technology at this point is still being used for power, control, and manipulation, money and financial power. And when technology is used for unity and service to others, then I think, we'll become a truly 4th density civilization very quickly, because we know that there's free energy devices, many, many free energy devices that have been suppressed, multiple cures for cancer and diseases, and so much knowledge about even extraterrestrials and things that are being suppressed. I just saw from the CERN collider the other day, a news article from, CERN, the particle collider in, I think, Amsterdam, I want to say.
Yeah.
The scientists that are working on this, and these are like the top physicists on the planet, right? These guys have finally confirmed that they are communicating with entities of some sort on the other side of these dimensions that they're colliding particles with or something. Like, yeah, we're actually interacting with entities that have a kind of personality and respond to us, which is just mind-blowing, right? I mean, this is not like some Ancient Aliens TV show. Like, these are the top scientists in the world. This.
Aliens. Not trying to say there's aliens, but it's probably aliens.
But there's definitely aliens. I mean, the government admits that there are. So what else are we waiting for at this point?
Yeah, it's interesting because like they disclose all this information about UFOs and stuff like that. We're not really having this conversation of, oh yeah, there's life beyond this. And it reminded me of, who said it? I think it was Richard Rohr or maybe Rick Archer. I think it's probably Rick Archer. He said this thing because like in regards to religion, how they're saying like the premise of religion is Jesus died for humanity. But then what happens when aliens show up? What's going to happen to religion at that time when now you got to include the aliens and there's proof of aliens around?
Richard Rohr.
Richard Rohr said it, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that was always my question with aliens is like, okay, if there's life out there, then did Jesus die for their sins?
Yeah. Yeah. And then Rick Archer, no, not Rick Archer. Richard Rohr said, oh, is Jesus on a saving campaign going from different planets to different planets?
Yeah. Imagine having that job. You got to go to 1 trillion planets to get crucified.
Oh my God.
Can we come up with a better plan, man?
Yeah. after round 10 of it, okay. All right. Can we do something else?
Yeah. Slowly appeasing God's wrath over this cosmos.
Yeah. It's interesting. I hear some people reply to it from a religious standpoint about aliens. And the reply that I heard, like some people say is, oh, that's just demons playing around and doing this other stuff. And I'm like, if these guys are coming out of love, like, how is that demonic?
So the universe is filled with demons. That's what we believe? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's your view of reality. Wow.
Talk about narcissistic.
I was on a like fundamentalist radio show a month or two ago. I didn't actually know it was until I was on it. I kind of figured it out, made a conversation.
So
it was a really fun interview, actually. And once I figured out what kind of show I was on, I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna like debate this guy out of his theology or whatever. I'll just speak my truth authentically and just be very loving as I would normally be, and let the chips fall where they may. But there was one point where I was just genuinely curious because I kind of forget how the fundamentalist view sees things. And he was talking about the devil's, do you believe the devil's real and stuff? And I said, well, I think the devil is an ancient world personification of the human ego, right? If you don't believe it, the devil's a real being, though. I was like, no, of course not. And he says, but you don't believe evil exists. I said, well, define evil, right? And we got to this point where he was talking about the devil, fell from heaven. It's literally true. He tried to usurp God, got kicked out, came to earth, deceived the planet, and now he's taken all the non-Christians to hell. So I said, okay, but according to that logic, that would mean that the devil outsmarts God, right? Like the devil down here just foils God's plans. Is that what you believe? And he was like, yep. And I went, whoa, I didn't expect him to say that.
Yeah.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah. It's very interesting because I grew up with that belief as well. Shifted since then with that, but just that belief because you've been taught that to believe that way and been conditioned to believe that way. Never really question it, but just taking it for what it is. And like when people say that, I just say a simple thing. I'm like, okay, can you show me the footage of that? I throw it out way, but people have the right to believe they want to. Yeah. For me, I'm more of an experienced person, so I'm experiencing my own personal relationship with God. And also in regards to the devil, like my hypothesis is God is an energy. God is this powerful energy, this creative energy that loves us unconditionally and allows us the free will of what we want to do with that energy. And what you see on display in the world is people using that neutral, unconditional love and energy in whatever ways, and you see it on display in the world. So evil comes from people, evil intentions. That's what I feel like. If something's done evil, it's people evil intentions. It's no some being in hell forcing people to do these things or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, it's all God. But I think you explained it in a video. I forgot what video you expressed this in, but like this whole collective space of like God experiencing itself. And that's really what I believe. And people have the right to believe what they want to believe too. You think that the devil's out to get you and stuff like that. You're such a powerful creator. You're going to create the reality in which you're going to see evidence that this thing is happening. And then some people see like, oh, this is a beautiful temporary life experience. And I'm here to establish that deeper connection with who I am beyond this human identity. And you're going to see everything to support that. And simultaneously, this all is going on synchronistically all together, which is very interesting.
Oh, it sure is. It's the greatest show on television.
That the aliens watch us too. Like, okay, what channel are we going to watch today?
Let's watch Earth. Like, oh, this is getting dark. We got to turn the channel. That's actually one of the things I think the Law of One explains the best of the nature of darkness and light, good and evil, with the service to others, service to self path. We can definitely get into that if you want to.
Oh yeah, please do.
I love the way that the Law of One puts kind of a scientific understanding to everything, because that's what makes it so observable of like, oh yeah, that is how it works. I can see that in my experience. And they explain how in like chemistry, for example, a particle cannot do what's called work. You've probably heard that term in chemistry. A particle cannot do work, which means create change in the environment or influence its environment, unless that particle has a charge, right? Positive or negative. And so the Law of One says we're essentially like an electron or something as souls, as beings. We have to choose a polarity, positive or negative, in order to do work in consciousness. And so that polarity is the choice we have classically called for eons, good and evil, right? Or heaven and hell, darkness and light. And they say that the positive path is called service to others, which means that your view of the universe becomes, there is only one being in the universe, one energy, like you said. And so if that's true, then I must treat and see all beings in the universe equal as I would see myself. And that's the path of Jesus, the Buddha, these avatars who've taught, do unto others as you would do unto yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. It's the golden rule because it's the service to others path. The negative path has a lot of similarities. It says, yes, there's only one being in the universe. That's very obvious. But because there's only one being in the universe, I'm obviously that being, and everything else is obviously just my dream world. So there's nothing really out there except for me. And so the dream is here for me to control and conquer and dominate. The Ra says that the negative being sees the universe as that which shall be put in order. I'm here to bend the universe to my will. And so the more that a negatively polarized being conquers, controls, and dominates the dream, the more godlike it becomes in the dream to itself. So that's how the negative path polarizes, is through control, power, manipulation, deception, and so forth. And then the positive path polarizes through love, service to others, devotion, and so forth. And the consequences of those two polarities are very different. We know, for example, that ascended masters, avatars, enlightened beings tend to have supernatural powers like Christ. They can levitate, they can walk on water, they can read minds, they can heal. These are the powers that evolve of work in consciousness on the positive path. Because you're one with everything, you can do that which would be possible if you knew you were one, right? If everything's me, then it's like being lucid in a dream. I've basically godlike powers, right? But on the negative path is not the ultimate true understanding of the universe. And that's why the Law of One explains that the negative polarity only goes to 6th density, and then it has to concede and reverse polarity to the positive, because the path of illusion can only go so far.
Wow.
Did you know that?
No, you just blew my mind. So
they call it the path of that which is not, the negative path. because the one flaw in the philosophy of the negative path is that there's still some separation in the view of it, in the way that a negative being wants to control others, gain power over others. Well, if you're truly one, if it's just you here, then who are you gaining power over? Who are you controlling, right? There's still some duality there. And so because there's still some duality in their perception, they can only take it so far. But they can take it pretty far, but only to the beginning of sixth density. So that's why Ra says there are no negatively polarized higher selves in the universe. All higher selves are positively polarized, which is interesting because that means that all negative beings have a positively polarized higher self that's leading them and guiding them, which is, well, that's fascinating. But that's because, again, the positive path honors free will. It doesn't want to control or dominate anyone. It wants to let all beings express their version of the creator that they want. So a positive higher self in its past lives may have been a negative being before it had to reverse. And it still says, well, let me bring this negative being the experiences and catalysts it needs to become more negatively polarized. And at a certain point, the negative path kind of runs into a brick wall and just says, well, I've done everything I can do to polarize. I can't gain any more polarity. And so, you know, maybe a couple million years goes by of trying to gain more polarity. And then they just say, all right, it's obviously futile. Let's just go be positive now. And then they, I don't know if they restart at fourth density positive or pick up at sixth, but you know, you have to learn those lessons on the positive path now too, right?
Yeah. Oh, let me mute my phone because the ambulance coming by. Kai, continue.
That is quite interesting. That, you know, that the path is not so linear as one would think. There's a little bit of a roundabout in there, huh?
Oh yeah. Even on the positive path itself, they say, Dell brought up the concept of the wanderer a little bit ago. A wanderer, for those who are not familiar, is the star seed, basically. A being who is from a higher density of consciousness, who chooses to come back to this planet to be of service to the planet by bringing their higher frequency, their higher wisdom and whatnot. And Ra says that the wanderer or starseed has a lot of potential for growth here in third density, because this is the only density level of the 7 densities that has the veil of forgetting, where we don't remember our past lives. We don't carry any knowledge of our past lives with us, because that'd sort of be like cheating in the game. The whole point of third density is to not know anything at all, and just you're plopped here in a human body, and you get to grapple with the positives and the negatives lifetime after lifetime until your soul finally decides which polarity you want to be. And that's actually what suffering is. Suffering is the friction between positive and negative. When my energy field is not fully positive and there's some negative energy in it, the rub, you could say, between those two energies is what we call suffering. Because I know I want love, I know I want peace, but yet I'm experiencing judgment and anger and separation. And so it's like this internal conflict that forces me to say, I got to commit to the positive path. I got to forgive everyone. I got to be a being of love. And then I stop suffering. Well, likewise, on the negative path, if I am supposed to be a negative soul, I have to basically cut myself off from the universe, meaning I can't feel anything for anyone. I can't feel any empathy for anybody. That's why the negative being eventually stops suffering as well, because they don't feel anything anymore, right? They don't care what anyone thinks about them. There's just me. There's nothing else in existence but me. I'm all alone in this dark universe, you know? So the negative being stops suffering as well. It's what Ra calls the sinkhole of indifference, where we suffer. And the suffering is like, I use the analogy of a pot of boiling water. If you throw a frog into a pot of boiling water, that frog's gonna go, ouch, and it's gonna try to jump out, right? Well, let's say the beings that jump out of the boiling water are the positive ones. But some rare frogs actually like to boil, and they get thrown in the pot and they go, ooh, it's kind of nice in here. And that's a negative being, right? So third density is like that pot of boiling water that the source is throwing every soul into, saying, Let's put you in there and see which one you choose. And so a wanderer is a soul who's already made that choice, and almost always of the positive path. They say the negative path has way too much to risk by wandering, so they usually don't. But the positive path has a lot to gain by wandering because they can be of service. So a higher density soul, let's say fourth or fifth density, might come back to third density and say, okay, I'm going to be a spiritual teacher. I'm going to create technology that helps the world or something like that. But there is still a risk that they may get karmically involved here in third density. They may perhaps betray somebody, and then when their lifetime is over, they have their life review. Their soul's going to go, oh man, I didn't know I still had that in me. Like, I got to go back and absolve that karma now. So a wanderer can get involved to the extent that they have to reincarnate 4 or 5 more times to resolve that karma. But other than that, there's a whole lot of reward to be gained here for those higher density souls, because this is the only density level with suffering. And so if you come into this realm that has true, deep human suffering, you can have great service. You can be of great service. Whereas being of service in 4th to 6th density, where everyone's enlightened, is a lot harder, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And do you feel that these classifications are so like rigid? You know, is there any like gray area in between them, or is it just is what it is?
You mean with the densities?
Not with the densities, with the classifications of types of beings. You know, we have the wanderer, the positive and the negative, and can they be on a journey in between the one or the other?
Yeah, well, the only space where there is that journey between the two, again, is here in third density. Every other density, 4th through 7th, you have to have a polarity to be in that density. You can't actually graduate from third density until you choose a polarity, because that's the whole purpose of this density level. So like the purpose of first density is to just experience existence. Earth, water, fire, air, space. That's all you are in first density. So consciousness needs a few billion years of just hanging out as the 5 elements. And that's the purpose of first density. After a time of gaining that experience, it evolves to the second density, which is growth and movement, where you can be an organism living in an environment. So microbial life starts to form in the oceans, right? Insect life, plant life. And think about how many more variables consciousness has to deal with in the second density than the first density. You know, when you're in the first density, you just have those 5 elements and their interactions. Once you're an organism in an environment, even just a plant, you have to survive, you have to grow, protect yourself. As an insect or an animal, you got to find food, you got to reproduce. So consciousness makes a huge level up in second density in terms of how many variables it grapples with. Well, then likewise, think about how many more variables a human being has to deal with than a plant or an insect or an animal. Way more, right? We have that third chakra open now where social interaction happens, and there's social discourse and relationships and all the things that evolve in third density, like social hierarchies, economy, medicine, technology, religion. Like, wow, consciousness makes another giant level up in third density. And the third density is where the soul has to decide, do I want to be positive or negative on my soul's evolution? Once it makes that choice, it's off to the 4th density. And if you can imagine it, another huge level up happens of things we can't conceive of from this level. Just like a plant or an animal can't conceive of what it would be like to be a human, we can't really know what it's like to be a truly 4th density being and have telepathy, have all these psychic abilities and traveling the universe and stuff to be of service. It's a whole new world. It really is.
And like with Jesus and the ascended masters, when they're on Earth at the time, alive on Earth, were they coming through from that 4th level density or even a higher one? Or what density were they coming from?
Say again?
I said, so like Jesus and other ascended masters, when they were on Earth at the time of living their human experiences, what density were they coming from at that level?
Yeah. So Ra says that Jesus was a late stage fourth density wanderer who was eligible to graduate to the fifth density. But so the fourth density is the heart chakra density of love and oneness. So that's the density where you want to be of service to people. And the soul that is Jesus, apparently, instead of graduating to his first fifth density lifetime, he actually said, I want to go back to third density as a wanderer and rescue this poor civilization in ancient Israel from this extremely domineering, monolithic view of the divine that they have. That God's this angry, wrathful being that they need to give blood sacrifices to. You know, they're so locked into separation. I can help this culture if you let me go back there. So he chose to come back to third density to basically be a martyr, to demonstrate the true revelation of God, which is love. And I think his soul knew that the only way, like if I go to this extremely barbaric religious culture and teach these things, I'm definitely going to get killed for it. There's no doubt about that. But that's okay with me because, as Jesus said, greater love has no man than this, that he lays down his life. And so a fourth density being, knowing they're eternal, knowing it's just a short lifetime, I mean, compared to fourth density that you live 90,000 years, according to the Law of One, in Earth, you're going to live 90 years at best. So it's like 0.001% of what I'm used to. No problem, let's do it. So Jesus came here, did that, and then they ask him, where is Jesus now? The soul that's Jesus. And Ra says, he is now learning the ways of fifth density. Pretty interesting.
Yeah. Imagine. Happy 89,000th birthday.
Like, are we still counting? Like, man, I feel old.
Yeah.
Well, you know what else is interesting is that Ra says Earth, or third density in general, was intended to be a lifespan of 800 to 1,000 years.
Really?
And because our planet in particular is a very warlike, divisive planet in comparison to most, when the population grew enough on our planet, 75,000 years ago or something, and tribes started forming, and then wars and genocide and tribal takeovers. And I mean, this is what we know about human history. You go to the other tribe, you kill all their men, you rape all their women, and you take them as slaves. Like the most barbaric thing you can imagine doing to another sentient being. And what that did was it lowered the frequency of our planet dramatically because of the amount of suffering happening in consciousness. You better believe the energy field is going to suffer from that. And because the energy nexus of the planet was diminished so much over that course of time, our lifespan went down a lot. And I think that's why you see in the Bible these mentions of, beings that lived 10,000 years ago. They say, oh, they were 900 something years old, 780 something years old. Methuselah, right, in the Old Testament was 980 years old. And we go, oh, these dumb people didn't know anything. They're just making shit up. Well, no, actually, they kept pretty strict records of their ancestry and how long people lived. And there was a time, and Ra confirms this in the Law of One, where people did live, up to 1,000 years, 800 plus years. And that was right around the time just before tribalism really sort of took over the planet.
Yeah. And also all the chemicals that food have now as well. I'm pretty sure back in the day they weren't putting all that stuff into it too.
Nope. So there you go. Technology again, right? Actually, devolution is happening through technology rather than evolution in some ways.
Yeah. I feel like it's like the gift and the curse of the technology. So like, for example, we're able to connect what we're having right now, having a podcast, talking to people, sharing an amazing, powerful message. And also there's things out there that inflict harm on people as well from the internet too.
Yeah. Yeah, the universe is inherently neutral in that regard, that there's nothing in the universe that's intended to be inherently positive or negative, but everything's meant to be like a blank canvas, that the being who finds it decides how to use it based on their state of being, positive or negative. So we live in a universe that's truly designed for full self-expression and full free will. So it's like the same lamp that someone writes the Bible under someone can also commit a forgery under the same lamp. It doesn't mean anything about the lamp, but the being who's using the lamp, right?
Gotta blame the lamp, man. It's the lamp's
Don't
fault.
blame the lamp.
But I love lamp.
I love lamps. Who doesn't love lamps?
That damn lamp. It's the lamp's fault.
You go to court, you blame it on the lamp.
Your Honor, I'd like to bring the lamp to the stand.
Aaron, you were talking about how all of the different, religious entrees are, they're all food. There was something that I was listening to called The Secret Teachings of All Ages, where it pretty much goes through all of the different, sects of religion and how it is that they actually came to be, which seemed like it was just like one person who had a thought one day and decided that they wanted to create a different perspective about the same thing, which is ultimately God. But then, listening to all of these different ways that people are perceiving the same thing, it also brought to my attention that science is actually, it could be perceived as a religion.
Scientology?
No, science itself.
Science
Well,
itself.
psychology is its own thing, or we can do that in another episode too, right?
Yeah, I think we've seen that science has definitely become the religion of the atheist, in this day and age. And isn't it funny, the parallels, right? In the same exact way that Christianity, Islam, and Judaism have been used to justify all kinds of horrors and evils in ancient times, right? Now science is being used to justify all kinds of horrors and evils on humanity. It just goes to show you again, like we said, it's not the thing itself, but the level of consciousness of the person that's using it. So we know that science can be great, and it can be very beautiful, but it can also be used for some of the greatest evils we've ever seen, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the same thing with religion as well. It could be used in a beautiful way, and then people use it in harmful ways, like the genocides and all the other stuff that happened in the belief of religion.
Yep. Inquisitions and all that jazz.
Right. And it sounds like they all have a lot of things in common. I'm curious to know what it is that you've found and what it is that you resonate with, in particular with maybe some of the new ones that you're finding. You mentioned Buddhism, and how many different spiritualities have you looked into, Aaron?
Yeah. Well, definitely all of them by this point, but how deeply have I looked into all of them is the real question. The Eastern traditions, when I left Christianity, I was hungry for knowledge and understanding about the divine. I'm sure you guys can relate, because in the West, in Christianity does the worship aspect of the divine really well, but it doesn't do the theology very well. It has really twisted, distorted views about God and an understanding of who God is. So I was so put off by that for my whole life that I was like, I need to find some answers, man. So I dove into the Eastern traditions, especially Hinduism, secondly, Buddhism, thirdly, Taoism. And I'm like, man, these religions are almost identical. They're different verbiages and stuff, sure, different languaging, but they're teaching the exact same stuff. Non-duality, emptiness, oneness. It's very standard in the East. And only once I understood Eastern teachings did I go back to the Bible and to the teachings of Christ and go, oh, wow, he was also teaching these things, but he only had available to him the sort of primitive first century language of Judaism to put these terms. And because it was a monolithic religion built on heavy duality, they just didn't have many convenient terms to explain oneness. So Jesus was really left with things like, I and the Father are one. The kingdom of heaven's inside of you, not outside of you. And the more that you understand that Jesus was a realized, enlightened being like the Buddha, then you go back and reread all of his teachings and see it from a totally new light. All things that the Father has are mine, Jesus said. when that which is perfect has come, that which is imperfect shall pass away. Jesus is talking about when true revelation, when perfect awareness comes, the imperfect, the egoic, the duality passes away. When the eye is single, the whole body is full of light. When we see through oneness, right, the body's full of light. When we see through separation and duality, the whole body's full of darkness. So you're like, man, he was doing the best he could to explain these things to these first century Jews who, let's be honest, if you don't understand non-duality, you're not going to catch really what he's saying. And that's also why Jesus ended almost all of his parables by saying, he who has an ear to hear, let him listen. It's like very few of you have the depth of awareness to understand what I'm really saying. So he would shroud his teachings in parables and stories, which is a really ingenious way of teaching non-duality. Because number one, if he just comes right out with it, and he did, of course, but if he was more aggressive in his languaging, he would have been killed a lot sooner. But of course, he knew that these religious Pharisees also don't understand non-duality. So if I just tell stories, then they're not going to catch what I'm really teaching, but hopefully some of these people will catch it. I think it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And here we are. There's still people who don't get it, but then they put on a persona that they do get it.
Yeah. Just like they did back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's already the top of the hour.
Look at that. Clicked on by.
Aaron, how do people find you, get in touch with you? I mean, we know, but just to remind them, no.
I keep it pretty simple. It's just Aaron Abke basically anywhere. So AaronAbke.com, Instagram / Facebook / YouTube / Aaron Abke. That's where you'll find me.
Yeah. And you do have your classes going on too, your online series as well, right?
Yeah, 4D University.
Would you like to share that with our audience so that way those who are interested can take a look at that? Or is it still open? Is it closed?
Oh yeah, it's evergreen. So you can join anytime you want to. It's called 4D University because I wanted to make an online curriculum, an online academy that anyone in the world can join who is truly hungry to make that transition from third density to fourth density, which is to say from separation consciousness to oneness consciousness. So it's an online academy that's solely designed for that. And it's a 7-month curriculum right now. I'm going to probably add more in the future, but I have 3 sort of master classes that that I take the student through. The first one is Master Your Mind, which is just about really cultivating self-awareness and mindfulness, understanding the ego and some of the things we talked about on our last podcast. And then we go to the second course, which is called Meditation Mastery. And that's where we build a really strong foundation and practice of daily meditation. For the third course, which is basically a course that's designed to help facilitate a Kundalini awakening, because that's really what signifies the transition into fourth density is when the Kundalini energy awakens. It's actually fourth density energy is what's actually happening. And that process needs to be handled in a certain way, very safely and delicately. So I wanted to make the curriculum in such a way that it really gives people the groundwork and the foundation before we jump into something like that. So it's a very comprehensive curriculum. Don't come if you're not ready to do the work. But if you are ready to do the work, we got a place for you.
That is amazing. And you made a valid point in regards to the Kundalini awakening and setting the container for that to be able to have a smooth transition into that, because you hear lots of stories of people who got their Kundalini awakened too early and all the chaos that it was causing in their life from that. Yeah.
It's no joke, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shakti doesn't mess around. She gets down to business.
The Shakti got real.
She does. I'll tell you what. But she is so beautiful to work with because she, Shakti is the divine feminine. So it's the energy that makes up the whole universe. But Ra calls it intelligent energy, right? And you get to see that when this energy awakens in you, how she begins to move through your chakras, your nervous system, and starts to transform and upgrade your entire neurobiology to a higher frequency level, to fourth density level. And so, all the old stuff has to get burnt out and purged out, which is the difficult part. But we teach people how to handle that journey in themselves, how to process these die-offs, heal these things that are coming up, and ground that energy so that you just sort of let Shakti do her thing. And man, she is so intelligent. She is very, very, gentle in some ways, in that, she will start appearing to you in your dreams, in your meditations, and she very much lets you know the things she's about to work through when you start to develop a relationship with her. So, I mean, I could talk about it all day, but it's just such a beautiful transformational process that when I went through it myself, I became very hungry and eager to find a way to help other people go through the same process that I had gone through, using advanced yoga practices, mostly a lot of breath work, a lot of daily meditation, and a lot of learning and understanding. So it's just, I'm having a blast with it. I really am.
That's actually, I know we're at the top of the hour. I was just about to ask that question. Like, how was your Kundalini awakening? Like, what happened for you?
Oh, we need a whole podcast for that, man. Truly.
Well, looks like we may have to do episode 3 then. I would definitely want to.
Gotta have me back on. Yeah.
We'll love to hear about that and your own Kundalini awakening. Yeah, you're right. We can have a whole podcast talking about that.
For sure, man. It's a fun subject.
Okay, cool. So that's the TBC then for that answer. And this was
Definitely.
An amazing conversation again. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, brother, for showing up again. Once again, you're amazing. Amazing information here for ourselves and for our audience to really digest and to integrate some powerful stuff. So thank you once again for just being you and showing up as you. And I love you.
I love you guys too, man. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure jamming with you guys. Can't wait to do it again.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who joined us in the audience. We appreciate you, and you made this what this is as well. We will see you next week, and stay
magical.
Yeah.
You've been listening to our Daily Magic podcast with Kai and Dell. Please like, subscribe, and tune in next week for another magical episode. Visit www.ourdailymagic.com for more. Thank you for listening and have a magical day.